it. Bonjour, so hello, all of my relatives. So this is being recorded on Zoom. And as the joke goes, will be seen by tens of people. I'm really grateful. Thank you for joining today. I love that, the help staff, and we have our ASC elder who's joined. Everybody is sporting their orange shirts. I am wearing an Indigenous youth shirt that honors missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. So this was at MOA. I think you can still get them too at the Museum of Anthropology. And so, yes, I just wanted to say happy National Indigenous History Month and also National Indigenous Peoples Day. And so, yeah, Rhianna, did you want to do an opening?
Sure. Witaskum, Hupachasadaksuk, on the unsurrendered territory of the Hupachasad people. Happy Indigenous Day, as Kinwa was saying. It's a good day to celebrate and to honor our First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and a good way to move forward in regards to reconciliation. Reconciliation to me means educating people about who we are and where we've come from and what we've done. And as First Nations people, I can say that we have contributed a lot to this country that you call Canada. And it is a good day to celebrate people who have moved you, who have stood out for people who spoke out in times when it wasn't positive to speak out on our Indigenous rights, our treaty rights. There's many people, and also to the artists who, in a good way, have brought forward a lot of our songs, our dances, and our traditions and culture. This morning I turned on the radio. And I heard Buffy singing one of my favorite songs, Star Walker. It's a beautiful song. And then a little bit later, I heard Yo-Yo Ma and Jeremy Ducher sing a honor song. And it filled me with pride that CBC Radio 2 would take this opportunity to highlight our Indigenous performers. I've had lots of people in my life that have taught me. My Auntie Jessie, who was the chief for the Hupachasad people back in the 60s. I'm sure she was one of the first women chiefs in Canada, and she led the Hupachasad people for 20 years. For my husband, who fought for Indigenous rights for 31 years. For my sister Judith, who as well has been chief in many different positions in her life. So those are the people in my life that I honor today, and so many more. People like Russell Means and Dennis Banks, who awakened that spirit of Indigenous rights within me way back in the 70s. I was only 4 at the time, but not really, but welcome. And I'm so glad to see so many people who are wearing orange shirts. I am wearing my earrings, red dress for, as Kinwa mentioned, for the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. And it is many things that we as First Nations people today are honoring and being proud of. So masicho.
Oh, Chimigwech, Rihanna. What did I want to say? Okay, well, I have prepared. So let me give you a quick heads up. We do have some trivia. So we did, or I did write or contribute to the health newsletter this past week. And so you're more than willing to pull that up, because we do have some of the share, like what I'll be teaching or sharing about include some of those. And we'll have some, I'll have some trivia kind of questions. We have some prizes. They are TBD. We weren't sure if there was a budget, we as in the Indigenous Initiatives team. And so if there isn't, it will be sponsored by Kokomis Kin. And you guys can have some Indigenous skincare. But we do have some ideas, we as in the royal we. And we'll have, I'm hoping that we can get some Bannock in for our Wednesday. And so that's, fingers crossed, we'll make it happen. Q creator. And so, yeah, I have a couple of things. Oh, good. I have a couple of things that I did want to share as we're starting off. And I'm already feeling a little bit like overwhelmed, because I've got videos, I've got clips, I've got PowerPoints, and Agata also has a PowerPoint. So we've got quite a few. I'm just trying to negotiate all of these different windows. But yes, speaking of which, Grandma Rihanna, Buffy is coming to the Chan Center. And so that's the day hasn't been announced, but tickets go on sale on Friday. And so they had a whole, I think I had mentioned this previously, but they had a whole like decolonize the Chan. And so I'm so grateful she's coming. I told my mom, she's like, we're going. And I was like, yes, we are. So just to keep it in the back of your mind in case you're able to join. Okay, so let's share. Let's play. Okay, so this is my fifth generation. So I would be the seventh generation here. And most people know that I'm writing my dissertation on Anishinaabe storytelling and art and law, mostly because we come from a family of storytellers and artists. And so, can you see my cursor? No. The one standing in the back is actually my great-grandmother, Angenique Carbonesian, whose stories that I reflect and recount in my dissertation. And so happy to have all of them. And then the little one I've shared before, she's at the front, she's the eldest. And she has stories from like the early 1600s. And she is both Anishinaabe and also Haudenosaunee. So we're kind of a mix. So over the past couple of years, I've noticed so many people talking about the importance of honoring the land. And UBC is here at the Musqueam territory on their lands. And so I, as somebody who's come from my own traditional territory and feel like I too am connecting and love this land and want to know more about it and its people, I took some time to prepare a little bit on just understanding more for help staff and people who are here and people who live, particularly on this side of in Halano and Catsalano. So areas we have the Musqueam people and their traditional Hulkaminam speaking people. And so part of the teachings, again, that I talk about is about the connection to land and laws. And so this is on this is just on their website. And the significance of lands and waters that continue to support their cultural and economic practices while serving as a source of knowledge and memory encoded with their teachings and laws. The name Musqueam relates to the flowering plant. I think it's called McKee, the river grass, which grows in the Fraser River estuary. And so there is, and I think this is pronounced Sitchem, that's been passed on for generation to generation. That explains how they became known as the Musqueam people of the McKee plant. I think. Obviously, I am not Musqueam or Halkanian speaking. However, I have found somebody who is. And so let me stop this share. And I will go to another share. It's not very long, but very informative. Okay, let me share sound and optimize video. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear this.
And so I thought, what a better place to do that than in Musqueam. But first, I'm going to share the Shweayam of Musqueam, because it's our Shweayam, our history of how we came to call ourselves the Musqueam. There's a Shweayam here. In Shweayam, there are ancient histories that have been passed on from generation to generation. And there's a Shweayam that teaches us, that passes on how we became known, the Musqueam, how we became known as the Musqueam people. And it started right here. The old people, they spoke of a small lake called Musqueam, where the Silithke lived. And the Silithke was a double-headed serpent. And the young people were warned, like, don't go near Musqueam because of the Silithke. Be cautious. The Silithke. I wouldn't want to go anywhere near the Silithke, the two-headed serpent. And so one day, the Silithke left Musqueam and made its way down to the Stotlow River. And as it moved down, it made a path as it traveled. And that path was winding, and everything the Silithke passed over, it died. And from its droppings, the Silithke's droppings, bloomed a new plant, the Musqueam. And this path that the Silithke made, it became the creek flowing through Musqueam to this day. This is Musqueam Creek.
Right.
Yeah. And for this reason, the people of long ago named ourselves Musqueam, the people of the Musqueam. When I think about the Musqueam, I think about what it means to be Musqueam and what it means to me to be a Musqueam artist. So I'd like to ask you, Crystal, after we've shared this Shweayam together and with all of you, what does it mean to you to be Musqueam?
You'll have to go and visit the link because it is really great. There's maybe 5 more minutes of it, and she does share some teachings even about UBC and some of the research that she did to help inform her own sense of identity here in Musqueam. And so, yes, I thought that was so beautiful to hear it again, and just to be reminded every day. So hopefully you enjoyed that. And there's a beautiful book. One of my supervisors actually gave me a book from that area that talks about that whole story. I don't know how many copies there are, or if it's very few, but it is something that is so beautiful to kind of see. Okay, well, I wanted to thank everybody for joining. As we were saying just before getting on the call, my social media today is just filled with such beautiful just, celebratory posts, videos, clips. There's tons of events. There's lots of opportunities to sort of learn. I just shared some of my favorites because I can, but there's so much more, even just from Apple. Like, I was looking at some of the things that, like, from the podcast to the apps that they're advertising around Indigenous languages. It's really something quite beautiful to see. And I also just felt like we need to take time to also celebrate and honor, right? And so I sometimes feel like the news that we see, it tends to be so negative, and there's so much trauma, and it's hard to always be bombarded with images of either discrimination or poverty, or these are obviously very real. But at the same time, I feel like it can really dampen the light on the spirit of who we're meant to be, if that's sort of the negative imagery that we're kind of seeing, right? And so I always try and work hard to kind of lift. We can talk about these things, and then think about the actions that can be taken to help support and nurture and honor and celebrate and, hold us up, lift us up. And so, yes, on Sunday, we celebrated Father's Day. So I was like, I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to, what's the word, celebrate my own dad. And so I'll go back into, let's see. So yes, so the first question, the trivia that I had, so hopefully you got to see it, was what's the name of the cradle board? Now's your chance.
Kinnigan, yeah? Kinnigan.
Close. You got the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Tikanagan?
What?
Tikanagan.
Who was that? Tikanagan. Yes, yes. So this is my dad, Rocky Fiddler. He's 19 here. I love this face because I feel like this is the face of a 19-year-old father. And I'm here, we're in Sandy Lake, which is our home community in Northwestern Ontario. And this cradle board, this is like this is like a 1970s cradle board. So Rihanna, I think I really was, a year old here in the late 70s. And so these Tikanagans are carried by the women and men, obviously, on their backs, and the little babies are kind of swaddled into it, and they're laced up, and because it's like tall, they get to stand up and they get to look around. Of course, now everybody has like Bjorns and other kinds of things, to be able to carry the babies, but this is what we did in the past. And because it's on a hardboard, then you can prop these cradle boards along things so that they're able to see sort of like, a full view of things. Okay, so we're into the next question that I have, which was favorite song of all time by George Leach. One of them. You just have to come off.
See Maya? Is that right?
Again, a little bit of the emphasis.
Okay.
Wrong syllable. But yes, Samaya is one of them. There was also another choice, and I have it here. We'll put this link in. But the first choice, my favorite song of all time, literally of all time, of all musicians of all time, is actually this song called Carry Me. And on his first album, it was kind of like a really blues, like rock and roll type song, but he has a beautiful sort of rendition that he's able to do, that he does, and it's a little bit slower and melodic. I just love it. Anyway, so I will put that link there too. Second question around this, if anybody's heard it, do you know how old he was, or how old she was?
Three.
Anybody?
3
3.
years old. Is that right?
Close.
Okay.
I'm going to do one more share.
Maya is written for my daughter, who is 3 years old, and that song was written in one take when we brought her back home from the hospital, and I was watching her sleep beside her mom, and I picked up the guitar and wrote the song for my daughter, and it just came right out, and yeah, it's a song for my baby.
Okay, so, oh, sorry, it's playing for me. So sorry, what was the answer then?
Newborn. 3 days.
Yes, newborn, 3 days old. So this is like, I've never had the chance to meet Samaya, but I mean, the fact that your dad, you know, is George Leach, and has written this, one of the most beautiful songs I think of all time, about you. I think there couldn't be another sort of ode to fatherhood than that. So great. And as I shared a little bit earlier, I don't know if you saw, but he's got concerts upcoming: Kamloops, Boston Bar, Cache Creek, Manitoulin Island, which is an Anishinaabe territory, Victoria, Falls Creek, and apparently he's coming to Vancouver. So those dates are coming up. So if you're in the area, be sure to check it out. Okay, and I'll go back to my share just a sec. So and now if I just talked about my dad, my mom would be upset. So here we go, you guys. We've got, this is what my mom, so my dad's an artist. He does kind of Norval, more so type woodland art, but my mom works with birch. And so these little brown pieces are sort of the birch bark. These are like that she's been able to kind of glue and work, and birch comes in so many different like colors as you peel back the various different layers. And so this one is of obviously all of the little babies. And what are they in?
Tikanagan.
Yes,
Noggin.
chicken nuggets. And we have like social, like you know, child programming and, you know, services and things like that that are called after actually Tikanagan, because it holds the babies. And so this story that my mom drew or illustrated actually reflects back to the time when I think my great grandmother, the one that was standing, she had a number of babies, young ones, and that when she would go into town, the mothers would line up their Tikanagans against the fence while they ran their sort of errands. And so there would be all of these babies just all kind of wrapped up and, you know, watching the show. And so that was something that I thought was still so important. You know, if you have a baby, they're constantly trying to like look up and like sit up and look around. They want to see life. And yeah, that was the importance. And then some of the cradle boards actually have kind of like a thing that comes before. It helps in case it falls over, like it protects, but you can also drape, you know, like a sheet or something over it too. So yeah. And this picture kind of cuts off, but there's an eagle, that's a wolf on the left-hand side. And then there's a bear, there's a turtle. So some of our clan animals as well. So I also shared a little clip about traditional parenting. So one of the things that we talk a little bit about help is around sort of parenting, and how I think part of us, part of why we work at Help even is to understand our own children, our own experience, how we can, you know, improve the life and the well-being of our own families and the children that we're involved in their lives. And so there's a little clip that I shared from the Help newsletter that talks a little bit about parenting, and in particular discipline. And so ceremonies are a real big part of rites of passage, but just also to mark not just big events, but even events in life. We're in the summer solstice, Niben solstice, the longest day of the year. This is celebrated. We call it the strawberry moon. So we have teachings around, you know, just the various different plant life. And so bringing life into the world is seen as sacred. The ceremonies themselves can also relate to discipline. And so this is a very interesting kind of area that I wanted to discuss, because we don't talk a lot about discipline parenting. I do, actually. But yeah, so at the core, the center of our kind of communities, our families, there's a whole system that surrounds the children as part of their whole sort of well-being and ways of thinking. And so there's an expectation of how they're supposed to be and who will be able to take care for them. And so I think they mentioned about like how you are supposed to care for community and also care for yourself. And so I thought like the image they showed in one of these clips was sort of like a young person helping, you know, like cleaning the dishes and things like that. And so quite young, taught sort of roles and responsibilities of care for family, care for everyone around you. And I thought that was something that was, I think, important, because as we age, we also have to reflect on how we're trying to care for ourselves, and that's reflected in the way that people view you. So, you know, we've had these discussions before around, you know, that we're all sacred. And so the act of parenting and even discipline is seen as sacred. We have some of our traditional values and teachings, we call them laws, around respect, honesty, kindness, and sharing as being an approach to parenting. So that was also mentioned. We've heard this, you know, adage many a time that it takes a community to raise a child. And so that's part of this idea that like there's this mindset of being able to care for those you know, around your home. And they referenced teepee, and right now so many people are starting to get ready to return to the powwow trail. And growing up, I was a dancer, and then my family had a like a chip wagon. We sold traditional. We actually had a chip wagon. We had a traditional pizza wagon. So we made like caribou pizzas and things like that. And so we would travel to all the different powwows. So I was mentioning Manitoulin Island earlier. We went to Wiki many a time to go, and I would dance. They would serve food, and we also had a teepee. So I learned to drive a truck when I was 16, because we had to we were always sort of caravanning to different powwows, but we would have these long teepee poles, and because these poles are like 18 feet, 20 feet, and so you'd have to drive with these for the teepee, to set up the teepee. And so we learned I learned fairly early on in my life how to set up a teepee, but we would have these teepees. We'd have the teepee set up for us to stay, because we would have like not just my own family, but the workers, everybody carry. So we'd have to have like a big place for everybody to stay. But we were like, it was just our teepee, but people would be coming to the powwow, would be visiting. So we would be in there, you know, like changing or eating or whatever. And then we would just have like tourists or like people just come in and like have a look and go, oh, like you guys are actually living in here. And we'd be like, you know, we were like, oh, okay. And then some people would be really curious, but I mean, we would have all of our stuff. It was kind of like walking into somebody's tent and being like, what's going on here? One of the things that I did find in sort of looking at different, because, you know, obviously I'm First Nations or Anishinaabe, I was also looking for ways to support and represent and, you know, uphold some of the Métis connections. And so came across the Métis family connections on Métis Nation BC. And so I thought I would have another little trivia question. So when you join that, who do you learn with? Anybody? Oh, yeah.
Louis?
Yes, you learn with Louis. Let me stop the share. Let's see if I can find. So if anybody been able to open it up? It's such a wonderful resource. Let's see. Do we have it here? Oh yeah. Okay, just a sec. Let me share the screen. So this is one of their newsletters that comes out. Oh, here's Louis. And they have, this is just the last one, but they have so many. And as some, you know, as our K2A team knows, and like us that we're trying to pull together, you know, content and share and doing it in an engaging way. I just thought that this was such a wonderful, look at Louis, Louis Kids Club. So this is the spring one. So many opportunities to learn how to do things. Look, they have the bird feeders, a daily activity, what's your name, where are you from? So help has been really trying to ensure that Métis children or Métis families can self-identify where or which communities they're from historically and have connection to or lineages to. And so this is something that I think hopefully as time goes on will strengthen Métis identity around those communities. Yeah, I just wanted to have a little share. There's, you know, it's really, and then this is Maddie the Magpie. And so you can click on this and it opens up to some of their language resources. And you can, again, here, Heritage Michif to go on iTunes or Google Play. So there's so many opportunities now that I feel like it's such a beautiful time to be Indigenous. As if it wasn't always. But yes, so I thought that was something that was really, really great. There's so many more. And so I only had so many words that I could write. So it kept being pulled from different different resources, but please have a look, spend some time. And then we posted the newsletter. And then I got a request to share out another resource. So I don't know if this is online because they emailed me directly and asked if I could share this additional resource. So this is for Charlene Waddell, the Senior Director at the Ministry of Education for Métis Nation BC. She said, please, can you share this out? This is Kawich Itoyak. We take care of each other, and it's Métis perspectives on cultural wellness. So I don't know if it's online, and it's quite an extensive publication. So it's like 168 pages, but it looks beautiful. Maybe I can share just what it looks like, just so you guys, sometimes that's helpful just to see. Yes, so she sent this directly to me, and I did ask. So Lorana Scott is on our Aboriginal Steering Committee meeting or committee as well, and so she might be able to let me know if this is possible to get online. Oh, here, we take care of each other. But another beautiful resource that we weren't aware of, or that I wasn't, sorry. Okay. Okay. Now, did anybody get to listen to this podcast or read this article? Not yet? Okay, so I've heard this, I've seen this over the years, and finally I was like, it took a Bannock and Banter for me to delve into this form of traditional Inuit parenting. And so it is something that is worth a read and worth a listen to, because they have a podcast as well. And so let me tell you a little bit from what I sort of grasped. One, there was a Harvard, this is back in the 70s as well. There was a Harvard, I think she's an anthropologist, who went up to the north and ended up studying and working amongst the Inuit. And so she just found that like their approaches to parenting were so fascinating. And it was so like uncommon that they never got angry or, were upset. She never saw that. And so the golden rule was that you don't shout or yell at small children. And so yelling at small children was seen to be demeaning, that the parent themselves was sort of seen to be having the tantrum rather than the child, right? In response. And so training children to yell when upset, it trains children to yell when upset, and yelling solves problems. So that was basically like the teaching of yelling at children. And so I know myself as a parent, I definitely feel like I have more control or can self-regulate around it, not always. And particularly, like I can think of, experiences when my children were much younger. I remember one time, like my oldest son at the time was like 3, and he so angry that he like slammed the door and broke the door off the hinges. I was like, oh my, and then you just question your whole like self as a parent, and like, I can't do this, like, So apparently kids learn emotional regulation from us. And so how do you then how do you embody or essentially learn to self-regulate? And so this was sort of their way that they do it, is that they use storytelling in order to discipline or to sculpt kids' behaviors in the moment, or even save their lives. And so I loved this one little quote from both the article, but also the podcast, about traditional Inuit parenting is incredibly nurturing and tender. And if you took all the parenting styles around the world and ranked them by their gentleness, the Inuit approach would likely rank near the top. They even have a special kiss for babies where you put your nose against the cheek and sniff the skin. So 2 more trivia questions. What's the name of the kiss?
Kunik.
Yes. Did everybody see? Has everybody seen the video? It's so cute. Okay. Let me pull it up then. Let's see if I can. Now this is one of those ones where it's on Upworthy. So if, like if I share it, hopefully it doesn't go to, yeah, there it is. Hopefully it doesn't go to, oh, what do you call it? An ad. Just a sec. So it went viral and I saw this and I thought, oh, it's so cute. I think this is, okay, wait, let me reload the page. I think hopefully if I play it, let me know if it's playing.
A lot of people think this is the Eskimo kiss. But we wanted to show you the real Inuit kiss, and it's called kunik. Usually it's done with a lot of emotion. You want to show? Like that. The more love you have for a person, the more stronger that you do it. Like, you take their head and you're like...
Ah, isn't that so cute? I just love it so much. I saw that. Anyway, so they're mother and daughter. You should follow them on TikTok, but they both have accounts. And because I too grew up thinking that like Eskimo kiss was like where you would rub noses, right? And this is actually like that traditional belief around that. And so the more you love, the bigger the sniff. Okay, next trivia question. This you might have to Google, or no, read the article if you haven't come across it yet. What story helped kids learn to keep their hats on their heads in the winter?
Quinoa, wasn't it? Something about the Northern Lights would take the hat, and now my memory is gone. But I thought it was really cool. I think it's like the Northern Lights would take the hat and play soccer with it or something. So kids were scared, and that made them keep their hats on.
Yes, exactly. And so this is one of the ways that they used storytelling. And so they would play, so the Northern Lights would play soccer with your head. So that's how, and I don't know, I feel like if you have, and particularly kids here, at least like when it's cold, sometimes you can't, but I feel like it's the hardest thing as a parent to just get kids to wear their winter clothes. And so imagine like in the Arctic when, yes, you know, if you didn't wear your clothes, like your hat, your ears would freeze off. And you get, you know, hyperthermia or whatever with it, like frostbite within the matter of like seconds, right? Like when it's so cold and the wind, yeah. And so that's what they would say. And it reminded me a little bit of the story about Musqueam, right? And the Camosun bog and the double-headed serpent. Now, this was the other thing that I was thinking about. So are people familiar with throat singing? Yes. So a couple of,
we know what it is.
yeah. So a couple of us got to participate in the Aboriginal Head Start. You know, they have like a cultural like teachings and sharings, and so one of them was that they had invited these Inuit throat singers. And growing up in Ottawa, there's a huge, a much larger, I should say, Inuit population than there is obviously out here in BC. And so I grew up, you know, knowing many Inuit, well, people, but also like performers, and so got to see it, and you know, the big drums that they have, and so I learned something that was kind of fascinating about throat singing. So obviously the two women, if you haven't seen this, you can, she also performs, but there's so many, but while they're doing it, it's kind of like a game, but the sounds what are they imitating? Where's Ryan? Is he on? I know he has COVID, but he was actually the person who won. Yes, yeah. So they imitate different sounds in their environment and on the land. So if you ever hear things, so they would do sounds, and we would have to guess what they were. But one of them was the sound of a saw, that they would use to be able to cut things up. And so I just thought that was so beautiful. Again, acknowledging the connection to land and territory and the sounds that, the Arctic or the subarctics, and what's being made out there. And not just the natural sounds, like even the saw, right? Okay, we're coming to the end. I saw this made me laugh. Sorry. Oh, there we are, our traditional like regalia in the background with the sunset. Yes. So one of the interesting things that, like, when I was saying it's a beautiful day, to be Indigenous, is that growing up, we had, you could name the handful of sort of films or like creators or artists, that were making, like films. So Alanis Obomsawin is on here. Some of her, these are oldies, goodies. But when I was trying to like think of what I wanted to share, I started to like look at some of these lists. So we at HELP as researchers are really good at creating and making lists. We do it for music, we do it for podcasts, we do it for articles, like we do it for everything. And so I was like, I need to make sure that we have a list going of Indigenous film, because as you know, I refer to a lot of Indigenous film, or film in general, but also some of the teachings. And so when I start to come across some of these lists, I was like, the majority of these, except for some of these older ones like Kanesatake, these are all in the last several years. And this list is actually from 2021, like last year, right? And so I don't think I had seen almost 90% of them I have yet to watch. And so I challenge people to support these young, well, not all of them are young, but these creators, these artists that are putting content out, and to sort of have a watch. And if you're interested in sharing, let me know. I'm happy to discuss. As most people know, it helps. any kind of like pop culture content and integrate it into our own sort of worldview. So we've got a running list, and I'd be happy to hear more. I also noticed that on Crave and different providers, they have now like threads of Indigenous content, so you can like look and see. And one of them was one of my all-time favorites too, was Smoke Signals. And then if looking like internationally, I loved the movie Whale Rider, the Maori movie Whale Rider. So there's so much content out there that it's hard to even keep on top of. And so that's my challenge for people to support other Indigenous creators and artists and see the content. Some of it is hard. That's okay. That's part of the learning to go through, and hopefully that inspires action, right? And this is the photo. There, obviously, we deal with younger kids. I don't know if it would have the same impact if I had, the 3 teens. Now that they're, I was celebrating on the weekend, because on Saturday I had a 14, 15, and 16-year-old. Sunday I had a 14-year-old and 2 16-year-olds, and then on Monday, yesterday, we had like a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, and 17-year-old in the household. So this is them when they were young, but an oldie and a goodie, but just wanted to say happy National Indigenous Peoples Day, you guys. Yeah.
Woohoo! Thank you, Kinwa, for sharing so many things.
So fun, Kinwa. So fun. You make it so engaging and totally piqued my curiosity to go look for more.
Yeah, well, I mean, 7 minutes, so I don't know if people wanted to share or like, you know, if they took anything else.
I read the parenting article and I was so fascinated by the stories, like the storytelling and communicating to your children through storytelling. I loved the story about the soccer ball, but also there was a story about getting your kids to be aware of like not going into deep water. So there's like a sea monster with a special pouch just for children. So don't get too close to the shore. Like, I think that type of thing is really helpful. You know, it's such a gentle, it's just such a brilliant way to engage your children and to teach them. So thank you so much for sharing all those resources, Kinwa. And for me, I haven't seen any of those movies. I'm so sad, but I'm going to put them on my list. So thanks.
Well, we've been talking about like what could we do together, lunch and learn kind of wise. We could do a film screening like that. Some of those are on CBC Gem. They're on NFB. Like we could do a group screening and discussion. I'll bring the popcorn. I think that would be a great, I mean, that it feels like all of the things you shared, Kinwa, it's a way to engage that is like through stories and, you know, new ways of knowing. And Kyle and I were actually just talking about how awful I feel that we often use like threats and bribes with Cleo. Like, if you don't go to bed, you don't get a book. Like it feels awful. And so reading that, like the Inuit way of dealing with discipline was so helpful last night, actually, after we talked about it, was just like, also I can see Cleo just like, there's a part in this article, if you haven't read it, where kids kind of love stories about danger. Like they're just like, oh yeah. And Cleo definitely would be a good candidate for that kind of storytelling. So I'm so appreciative of the investment of your time and energy and spirit and joy and fun, Kinwa, and Grandmother Rihanna, for spending your time with us today. I want to thank you both so much for the investment of your time and energy. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Oh, gee, regrets. That article also talks a little bit about how they kind of, because the anthropologist comes across it because she hears a mother like sort of almost taunting the child to hit her, right? And it's like, what? And so that's the lead in to the story. And then you kind of go further down and you realize like, that's how they teach some consequence, is to like sort of, you know, allow and I've shared this teaching too, because I had to learn it as a parent, that like it's not helpful to kind of amp them up or to address things like in the heat of the moment. You know, you've got to come through, and this, when, you know, after post tantrum, here is when you can like really work with the child. And I think that actually it probably, like traditionally parenting, I think it would even come down further where it's completely calm, because I tend to want to address things when I'm still a little bit amped, you know, and it's like they do it when it's like completely like calm, and they do that. And then they use humor. And so they use humor to be able to like, you know, like if they want to throw something, which, you know, I shared about my daughter throwing a pen at me because I was getting her to sign her college application. It didn't go well. You know, they don't teach script, you guys, to kids anymore. Like it's highly problematic. Anyway, and so you would come down, and then like if if the child wants to throw something, then they walk through it. They go, ow, oh, oh no, you know, and they teach what it means to actually like the consequences of the behavior, but in a humorous and fun way. And so I hope that, like, you know, some of these, and you know, obviously the article does talk a little bit about, you know, the impact and the, you know, of colonization, and you know how that has shifted and changed those parenting and teaching styles, where it's been interrupted and impacted, and yet the desire and the way to continue teaching, like those it's not that they're sort of broken for sure, but to be able to integrate them and learn. And so I was thinking about it because when I go back to my community, I've shared this before, like I'm so loud. And I start to like, because culturally everybody speaks with like a Maddie voice, you know, at all times. And for those of you who don't know, like Maddie is like one of our most soft-spoken person, like on the team, and you can barely hear them, and so you just have to be quiet, like you just have to, and I was thinking about it in terms of even the environment, like how the language is very calm and very quiet, and like very is very you know, it has a very soft sound to the whole of the language. And I thought, oh, that sounds like the rustling of leaves. And also just being more from like a nomadic people, like you have to be in like commune like with the environment, or else you're gonna go hungry. So I thought about that too, because we would bring, like I've shared I brought you know, kids to like grade 7 and grade 8 kids to their field trip like in Toronto, and there was like, I don't know, we were 40 of us, and you could hear pin drops, right? Like people were shocked, like they were like, I can't believe that you have all of these kids here, and yet it's so quiet, and everybody's having complete conversations, like it's yeah. And I was like, I know, I had to retrain myself, you know, like when I'm in community to be quiet and soft. And then I'm like, I can't take it. I talk to my mom. I also develop a very interesting accent as well. Anyway, so I can see that there's that's part of the work of like bringing back some of our traditional practices and parenting practices and learning those teachings. And I think like, I just thought that was so beautiful, that the potential, if you had to rank, you know, that sort of the Inuit parenting style would be the sort of the softest, kindest. Yeah. And I hope that there's sort of like more good news stories like that, and opportunities to learn and share some of these teachings with the world. Yeah. Any final thoughts? It's already 12.
Just another huge thank you. Kinwa, every one of these is unique and different and entertaining and informational, all of it, all in one big package. I know if Mariana was not in Norway, she would be here. She's on a work trip to Norway, but I will let her know how it went and let her know the recording is available. And Elder Rihanna, just always, the words that you speak always set the tone for me for what we're actually taking in. So my gratitude for you for being our elder at HELP, opening us up in a good way for so many of our events. Thank you.
Masi, Shannon, for those kind words about me, and Masi to Kinwa. As was mentioned earlier, your spirit and your enthusiasm and your willingness to share is, for me, part of the reconciliation of sharing who we are and what we've done. And the information you gave today was awesome. And I would encourage everybody to take a look at those films, to listen to some Indigenous music today. There is another movie I'd like to add to your list, Kinwa, called Beans. It's about the Oka crisis, and it's very educational about land rights and about sharing of the land. And you might have to watch it in 2 parts because it is quite intense. But just must-see to all of you for taking time today to share your time and for your interest in learning about Indigenous people and our ways. And I was thinking, as you were talking about parenting, a lot of our traditional ways of parenting were lost. And so when my children were small, I used to read them the Bernstein Bears that taught them values and problem solving. And I liked it because it was bears, it wasn't people. And so that brought me good memories. And also, hopefully by the end of the day, I will have another grandson. He is in the process of coming, and I'm going to spend some time with my other grandson today. And I am going to sniff him and let him know this is the Inuit way of being together. So masi kenwa, and masi to all of you.
Chimi Grudge. Also, I just wanted to say I do get a lot of attention for my bedspreads, and just so everybody knows, this is a Pendleton. It's a Pendleton, not a blanket, but it's actually an outdoor, what do you call those blankets that you put on the ground? You know, so it's like, it's rainproof. And so they are on sale now at Costco. So go out and get them for $30-something. They've got 7 different colors. I don't know which ones are sold out, but yes, you too can have one, and to bring your kids and play. So enjoy your day, and I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. Chimiget.
Thank you. Thank you.